Hello, this is Ronald Bourgeois, and you're watching SkilletSkills.com. I'm Chef Ron. Today we're going to attempt to cook some beef bone broth, homemade. And those of you that have had beef bone broth before, you've never had it like this. So stay tuned and let's get started. Beef bone broth is... Cut that. Sorry.
You're good.
Can I keep going?
Yep. Yeah, just when you're ready.
Beef bone broth essentially is what happens with gigantic soup bones, carrots, onions, and as you see, our typical 5 spices that you will never see me exceed. 5 spices. You could use the same spices, believe it or not, for making beef bone broth as you can for most any brothy type things. When I'm talking about salt and pepper, gotta have that parsley. Gotta have that pretty neutral. Red pepper flakes, as long as you don't use a lot, and rosemary. I could use this in beef bone broth, chicken bone broth. I could use this in spaghetti sauce, in a lot of things, but this is what you would kind of refer to as the food spices that you need when you're simmering something for a long, long time. And beef bone broth is going to, it'll sit there and simmer for several days. So let's get started. Carrots, you just cut them in a manageable section. You're going to not cut your fingers off, especially if you do that. And you have pieces of carrot flying everywhere. But they're difficult, so you got to kind of hit them hard. These carrot pieces, along with the spices, and this is a shallot. Those of you that have never seen a shallot before, it's kind of looks like a gigantic toe of garlic, but they're actually onion, and you cut off the end like that, both ends. And what I would like to do is go down the center like that and cut off the other end, just right down the center, and it gets the peel off of it pretty easily. That's all you need to do. Steak like this. Just this good. Okay, so here's your stock pot, and you got it filled up halfway, maybe a little more than halfway. Go ahead and start putting all your ingredients in. This is just going to flavor the broth. And you say, how do you get beef out of water and bones and vegetables? Well, this beef has got a lot of marrow left in there, and that'll come out into the broth over time. It'll actually be very nutritious, very delicious. This is the basis for a lot of your paleo food. And what can you do with natural beef bone broth? It's just amazing. You could use this ingredient and really up the nutritional value of just about anything you make. You could put this in any beef stew, any sort of Mexican stew, any kind of beef stroganoff, recipes that involve a sauce reduction. If you're going to take a steak and make a pan sauce and you want to use a beef basis for your pan sauce, this is what to do. So this sauce is very versatile. You'll use it a lot. You can store it in your refrigerator up to about, I would say, 4 to 6 weeks. It wouldn't go much longer than that. And then if you need it for longer, just put it in your freezer. I wouldn't leave it in my freezer more than 60 days, but people do. It's just good to kind of put a time limit on some of these things. Okay, so I got the beef bone broth set up now. Carrots, shallots have gone in so far, and now let's put a little bit of the spices. We got some rosemary and crushed red pepper, some parsley. And then we have kosher salt. Throw that in there, and some black pepper. Something about me, I don't like to throw it all in. I always leave a tiny bit remaining. Okay, that's it. And just get your pan started. And you want to stir it around. And then it's going to go on the absolute lowest simmer that you can possibly manage. And I'm just stirring it around in here. It's got to boil first. Okay, beef bone broth, as it continues into something edible, you'll see it started. If I wasn't here, we would have a certified disaster. So I turn the flame down. Let this volcanoes go down a little bit. Now, your job pretty much becomes scooping up foam, but when you have a lot of boil going on and the foam rises, the minute you turn it off, it all settles. There's not really much to scoop off, but this is pretty much what it looks like. And you can just either get this type of spoon, or you can get a slotted spoon. Let me show you what I mean. Step over here a second and get something like this, and let all the water go sliding through there and get the foam out. So make sure you don't take any onions with you. And that's really it. You just stir it around a little bit. And you stand over it. Don't move a muscle for 3 solid days. Not really. Actually, it'll do itself. You have it low enough, you scoop the foam off a few times, then pretty much okay to do this. Just cover it, check once in a while for water level. You don't want this thing simmering when you have about that much water left. Because you want enough of this to put in some mason jars and to have. So we'll always leave it at around that level. And it's okay. You just, I can tell you right now, at the end of the day today, that's going to go down to about here. When it does, fill it back up to where it is. Are you diluting the broth? No, because it'll cook for another day and concentrate. All you're doing is concentrating the nutrients in the broth, and it'll turn color. It'll come out sort of like an amber color. Then it'll get to be the color of maybe an old penny. But over time, it'll develop. And I'm going to tell you, there's no shortcut to this. It's pretty much a 2 or 3 day process. I'd say 3 days. And the longer you cook this, the better it tastes. And if you've had stew with normal ingredients and you just add water to stew versus adding homemade beef broth, it's just a world of difference. And you can do this with the other recipes that I mentioned as well. Okay, so that's pretty much it. You do the same process for beef broth as you would with chicken broth. It's just you're putting chicken bones in. You're still going to use carrots. You're still going to use kosher salt, maybe a little rosemary, parsley, crushed red. The same ingredients. It's just a different bone, a different meat, and same length of time. You could actually get away easily with chicken in 2 days. It cooks a little faster. But that's pretty much how you would do it, and we'll take a look at this when it's done. Okay, now we're going to continue with the beef bone broth. This has probably been going for 2 days. Alright, and now pretty much you're going to see in the broth, you could take all this stuff out, or you could just start pouring. Actually, what I like to do is pour it through a fat cup. And really, when you've done a broth for 2 days, it just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of fat registering on the top of this. It just really boils through and incorporates. So let's see what we have. We'll go ahead and just take it and put it. You'll have some of that. residual marrow in there. Just go ahead and I like to do it just so I can basically see. And all this has to go into a mason jar. Now, where you could keep it in your fridge for 6 weeks, you know, keep it in the freezer 2 months. I wouldn't like to go longer than that, because a lot of people think you can keep things in your freezer forever, and you probably shouldn't. So, alright, so let's take a look at it. This is where we are, and this fat cup will take what's on the top, bring it to the top, and then you'll start pouring through. Okay, just take this little thing up here, and it goes to the mason jar. And that's that. This is going to be delicious. You could put this in, like I mentioned before, soups, stocks, anything that involves beef that you would usually use water. You could use this broth. I'm going to make actually a pork roast today, and for the gravy I'm going to try to use this instead of water. In fact, just shut it down good, line them up. I know this is going to make, I don't know, 6 mason jars, maybe 5. Okay, so beef bone broth, 48 hours. Beef bones, you can get them at your grocery store, just soup bones. Or you can go to a meat market, and at the meat market they're going to want to sell them to you in gigantic packs, and it'll probably cost $30. So you can just go to your normal meat market and find soup bones of the right size and containing the right amount of marrow to make these, probably for about $7. And then you get your carrots, onions. I don't really put any garlic and a whole lot of other things. Just the broth will be rich enough with carrots, onions, your water, and your bones, and just let that go for 48 hours. Same thing with chicken bones, same type of seasoning, carrots. You can actually, with the chicken broth, add a little parsley. I don't know why, but it has an effect on that. And the same amount of time, 48 hours, comes out nice and nutritious.